All right, so we are in a series called The Story of God, Mount Sinai. We are in this mega series, for lack of a better phrase, where what we do is we are working our way through the great story of the Bible, starting in Genesis 1, in the beginning, God made the heavens and earth. And a whole long time ago, we did 6 weeks on creation, Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel, Noah. And then what we do is every so often, we look at some other stuff, and then we'll jump back into the story. And so we did several weeks on Abraham, we did Isaac and Jacob, Joseph, and earlier this year, we did the Exodus. So now, where we're at in the story, this is the part of the Bible where our knowledge gets a little bit fuzzy. You know, we love the plagues and the parting of the Red Sea, and then it's like, well, what happened after that, right? We get to a point in the story where, you know, you're reading about Moses and encountering God, and then you stumble into chapters of excruciating detail about instructions for how to build the tabernacle. And this isn't just, you know, here's a little bit here, a little bit there. It is excruciating, maybe for some of us. Not just a paragraph or two, chapters long. Here's the curtains. Here's the kind of wood to use. Build the altar, the Ark of the Covenant. You get to Leviticus. Leviticus is even more laws, almost no narrative. Instructions for the burnt offering and the grain offering. And for so many of us, it's like, man, what happened? Where are we in the story? And so the second half of Exodus, all of Leviticus, and the first part of Numbers are all, over the course of a year, Israel receiving the law at Mount Sinai, the very same mountain where Moses encountered God on the burning bush. Now he brings the whole nation back after getting out of Egypt, but now the whole mountain is on fire with the glory of God. And let's just be a little bit honest here. It reads like you're reading an owner's manual for your car. And it's like, can I just drive? Has anybody ever read through the terms and conditions on something you signed for? Like you actually read the whole thing. That's what it reads like. You're reading the terms of the covenant and the laws, and some of them are weird, right? It's like, you can't eat shrimp. Thank God that law's not around anymore. Come on, somebody. Can't eat, pork, bacon. There's the kosher food laws. There's laws about you can't boil a baby goat in its mother's milk, so cut that out for those of you who are doing that. Laws about not wearing 2 kinds of fabric in your clothing, so that cotton polyester blend, that's no good, hate to tell you. And so what makes it difficult is that you're literally reading like the terms of a covenant. You're reading the manual for how to function religiously, politically. This is like their constitution. And so many of us like, man, this is the graveyard of Bible in a year plans. Forget it. I'm going to Daniel in the lion's den. Where's David and Goliath? But I want to tell you today that these laws, and again, it's complex, not just by itself, but because you and I have a new covenant that's not the Sinai Covenant. So why do we need it? And yet Jesus said the whole Bible is all about him. Jesus said that what you and I call the Old Testament is actually his story. Here's what it says in the book of Luke 24. The risen Jesus tells his disciples, "These are my words I spoke to you while I was still with you, that everything written about me in the law of Moses, the prophets, and the Psalms must be fulfilled." Check out John 5, verse 45 through 46. The religious leaders don't believe that Jesus is who he says he is. And they're quoting the law of Moses. Now watch what Jesus says. "Do not think that I will accuse you to the Father. Your accuser is Moses, on whom you have set your hope. For if you believed Moses, you would believe me, because he wrote about me. You see, sometimes we can feel like, well, the Jewish people, they really understand the Old Testament because that's their Bible. But Jesus said, if you really understand Moses, you'll understand him. 1 Corinthians 10:6, last one I'll show you here. Paul is writing to the church in Corinth about some of the stuff we've been talking about. The manna and the water from the rock and the golden calf. And look what he says. These things took place as examples for us, so that we will not desire evil things as they did. Here's what I'm telling you with all of this. When you read, and I know this is like the hardest, like weirdest, most bizarre, some of the strangest stuff in the Bible. But when you read it, Paul says it was written not just for them, but it was written for us. And so this covenant is actually designed to anticipate your walk with Jesus. So here we go. You ready? This is part 6 of Sinai. And in one sermon, I want to attempt to cover the tabernacle, the law, and the sacrifices, okay? So not too ambitious. No problem. So we start here with the tabernacle. What's the tabernacle? So if you've read, again, some of these later parts in Exodus, the second half, in between 10 Commandments, golden calf, the covenant ceremony, you get blocks, chapters long, detailed descriptions of this tabernacle. Now, why? What's the point of it? And for you and I, what feels like very dry reading is actually incredible. And here's why. The whole point of the Sinai Covenant, the whole point of this agreement that God makes with Israel on the mountain, the whole point of it boils down to one thing. It's that God's very own personal presence is going to be in the midst of a sinful people. The whole point of the covenant is that God is making his home with people like you and me. And if you've been with us a little bit and you've read some of the story before, you know these Israelites don't deserve it. They complained about Moses when they were in Egypt. They complained when they got out of Egypt that they couldn't get past the Red Sea. They complained that there was no food and water in the desert. And just a little bit ago, they made a golden calf. And in spite of all of that, God chooses to bring his very glory and presence into their midst. And you see, this is different. This is different than God appearing to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It's more important than just Moses encountering God at the bush, because you see, in the tabernacle, he's not just visiting, he's making it home. And this, of course, is the beauty of Sinai. That God takes a people who don't deserve it. He brings them out of slavery by his own sovereign grace. And he says, this is the people I want to call my own. This is the place where I want to dwell. And so the tabernacle is this kind of mobile temple. Right? Lots of ancient religions would have a temple where the God would dwell. The place where you could meet with God. But you see, this temple, it's pretty cool because they actually set it up and tear it down as they move through the wilderness. And all of the instructions that you and I read, and it's like, man, you know, you're going through a hard time. You open up your Bible, you're like, Lord, I just need a word. And then it's like 8 chapters of a tabernacle instructions. And it's like, come on, like I need something for today. But you see, the beauty of it is that God looks out at people like you and me, and he says, I want to make my home there. And you see, what's stunning about this is that since the Garden of Eden, humanity has been separated from life with God. Outside of a few moments where God would appear to Abraham, appear to Noah, appear to this person, appear to that person, humanity has never, since the Garden of Eden, been able to walk in that kind of fellowship with God. Not in a way that he was there, that he was abiding, that he would make it home. And God here looks out on this group of people, and he says, here's where I want to live. So I got a diagram for you to help break this down. So if you could put that next slide up for me. I was deep this week. We were in the weeds. Some of you, okay, let me say this. I'm getting ahead of myself. Some of you are like already asleep, and there's 5 of you that are Bible nerds that are like, Joey, spend an hour just on the altar. And like, we can't do that, right? So this is the best graphic I could find. You probably can't even read all the font. But here's a visual of the tabernacle. So the entrance was always to be facing to the east. Always on the east there. So start on the right. You enter in from the east. And there's the altar where the burnt offerings happen. These are the sacrifices that make us right with God. Now, most people could go into the outer courtyard. But beyond that, there was a veil. Behind that was the holy place. And you see, there's a question here of access. So there was only limited access to the presence of God. That inside the holy place was the menorah, the lampstand made of pure gold, the table of bread, and the altar of incense. And only the priests were in there. Now, beyond that is the most holy place, the Holy of Holies. And in there was a box called the Ark of the Covenant. Now, for most of us, the only thing we know about the Ark is like Indiana Jones looking for it and Raiders of the Lost Ark, right? But the Ark, I got to preach. Come on, I love Indy. The Ark is this golden box that was literally the place where God's own glory and presence, the cloud and fire, would rest on top of the Ark of the Covenant, and it was called the mercy seat. That God is literally seated, enthroned on the Ark. And guess what? His throne is called mercy. Come on, that's a whole sermon right there. Now, the Holy of Holies, we'll get to this in a little bit here. Only the high priest, Aaron and his successors, could go in, and even then, only 1 day a year. And so you see there's a thing of access here because human beings, you and I, we can't handle all of the goodness and holiness of God. But here's the thing, God is finding ways for sinful people to have some access to him. But you got to watch. I've heard it described like this, that the holiness of God in the law is like electricity. Is electricity good? Yes. But anybody who's done a little electrical work will know they've probably been zapped a time or two. I know just enough to get me in trouble. See, electricity's good, but if you mishandle it, watch out. It will be like if the sun, which is 93 million miles from Earth, came a little bit closer. Imagine if the sun itself could be concentrated down and descend in our midst. We'd be fried. So how much more the God who created the cosmos? And so there's this question of access, and even Moses, you remember at the burning bush? Don't come any closer, Moses, and take off your shoes because you're on holy ground. And so what happens in the tabernacle is God is making his home among people and giving them a measure of access to his presence. Now, I want to tell you today that the tabernacle is the new Eden. And here's why. Go ahead and put up that next slide for me. I know this feels like a lecture. Stay with me. We're going to get to the preaching in a minute. The tabernacle is this micro Eden. Why? Because more than anything, it's the place where God's presence lived among people. God's presence has never lived among people since Adam and Eve would walk with God in the garden. Very specific here, Eden had an entrance on the eastern side. Isn't that interesting? And when God had Moses build the tabernacle, they always had the entrance on the east. We know in Genesis 1, the creation was made because God said, let there be light. And God said, let there be water. And God said. And when you read Exodus, guess what it is? God said to Moses, do this. God said to Moses, build that. Like Adam, the priests are responsible to watch over and take care of the place where God's presence dwells. Of course, in the garden, there's trees. And the lampstand, it says in Exodus, and I could read all these verses to you, but you'd all fall asleep. The lampstand was designed to be shaped into branches and blossoms. You're coming back into the garden. And finally here, very important, there were angels called cherubim guarding the way to the presence of God. So let me show you two verses here. Look at Genesis chapter 3. You'll see it on the screen. After Adam and Eve are driven out of the presence of God, driven out of Eden, it says he drove the man out and stationed the cherubim and the flaming whirling sword east of the Garden of Eden to guard the way to the tree of life. There it is. They're banned. If you want to get back to the presence of God in Eden, you got to go through some warrior angels. And these aren't the cute baby ones floating on clouds. They got whirling swords. And the sword's on fire. But watch this here, Exodus 26:31. While most of us are struggling to keep our eyes open in a list of instructions, watch what it says about the curtain that would separate them from the Holy of Holies in the Ark of the Covenant. It says you are to make a curtain of blue, purple, and scarlet yarn and finely spun linen with a design of cherubim worked into it. All right. So stay with me here. Say, I'm with you, Joey. Imagine you're a priest. The presence of God has made its home for the first time since Eden. You, like Adam, are responsible to watch over the place where God's presence is. You enter in from the east. You see the lampstand in the shape of a tree. And then you come before the veil, the curtain of the Holy of Holies, and you see the cherubim guarding the way to the presence of God. And yet for one person, one time a year, he got to go beyond the cherubim to the place where the glory of God dwells. You see, it's a place where God is. It's a place where you're not defined by your sin. It's a place where you can meet with God. Now, this anticipates the laws. Three things I want to talk to you about today: the tabernacle, the laws, and the sacrifices. This anticipates the law. Why? Because if God is making his home here, we got to rearrange everything. If God is making his home among us, man, you vacuum your house when company's coming over, right? Don't want to leave those dishes piled in the sink. How would you rearrange your life if God was coming to your house? And you see, this is why holiness is not just about a bunch of random rules. Holiness, apart from presence, becomes legalism. Holiness, apart from presence, becomes about a bland religious rules, and you better follow all of them. But if God is in our midst, how could we not rearrange everything in our lives to be close to him? You see, in the culture that we live in today, we reject the law of God. We view it as restrictive, it's oppressive, it holds us back. But you see, I would tell you today that the law of God is life-giving. It's life. And you see, the idea of holiness is that it's a two-sided coin. The holiness, on one hand, is to be separate from the world with its ways. But the other side of the coin of holiness is that you're separate for something. That's what the word holy means. It means set apart, set aside. And so you see, to be holy is not just to say no to the world, no to the corruptions of the idols and the empty pleasures of this life. It is a way of saying, I'm rejecting and shunning all of that for Him. Because I want to lay hold of the presence of God. I want to know Him face to face. And you see, you can chase everything out there in the world. But for me, I want to go beyond the veil and past the cherubim. And I want to see the mercy seat. And I want to see the cloud of His glory. And I want to hear His voice. And I want to see His face. See, listen to me, friend. You don't have to follow the law. You get to. You don't have to rearrange your life for the presence of God. God won't make you do it. I won't make you do it. You can deceive all of us in this room. But listen, at some point, you've got to decide for yourself, I want Him. I want God. And you see, that's what real biblical holiness is all about. It's not about looking down your nose at everybody else and look at me, I'm better. Look at me, I've got it figured out. It's listen, I found Him. I want Him because the fire of His presence is infinitely better than anything else that this world has to offer. Give me Him. And you see, in the church today, we've rejected holiness preaching because we have lost a value for the presence of God. And I want to tell you today, holiness is not just jumping through hoops. It's going beyond the veil. To see Him. To know Him. And it's really easy to look at the Bible and to say, well, I like these commands. Don't murder. Good one. Oh, I won't lie. But right? And so it's like, we can look at the laws and be like, okay, 10 commandments, we're cool with those most of the time. But then we look at some laws and it's like, man, I don't know how I feel about this one. And we pick and choose what's comfortable for us. We pick and choose what's convenient for us. And we take what we like and we reject what we don't like. But I want to tell you today, if the only laws you follow are the ones you like, you're not following Him. You're following yourself. Because you are still the ultimate standard and lawgiver of which laws to choose. But I want to tell you today, His law, His commands, His instructions are life. See, we think that if we can throw off the law of God, we'll become free, but we're just slaves. Let me give you an example. Let's say you have two people. One of them wildly unhealthy, doesn't eat right, sleeps in, doesn't really take care of their body. And that person might say, well, I'm free to do whatever I want. But when their body breaks down because it's unhealthy, are they free? On the other hand, imagine a person who disciplines what they eat, they get good rest, they go for a run, they work out in the morning. Somebody might say, well, that's restrictive. And guess what? It is. But it also leads to freedom. And so what I have found in my life is that there's no such thing as somebody with zero restrictions. you will always trade some restrictions for some freedoms. Always. The question is, which restrictions lead to the most freedom? And which restrictions lead to the most life? And what I have found in my attempts again and again and again to live up to the law of God and follow it with all my heart, and I try and I fail and I'm not perfect. But what I have found over and over and over again is never once have I followed God's law and regretted it. But I could give you a list 1,000,000 miles long of times I thought I knew better and absolutely regretted it. And I want to tell you today, there's a restriction that leads to life. So what happens? What happens when the law is broken? What about the holiness of God? What about the sin of the people? Well, you see, the beauty of the law in the tabernacle is that God provides a sacrifice. At the heart of Leviticus, for those brave enough to keep plowing through, and listen, that's okay. We love babies crying in church. That's a good sound. If you get to the heart of Leviticus, Leviticus 16 is this ceremony and this holiday called the Day of Atonement. And it was the one day a year, when the high priest could go in beyond the veil, past the cherubim, to the Holy of Holies. Leviticus 16:2, the Lord said to Moses, "Tell your brother Aaron that he may not come whenever he wants into the holy place behind the curtain, in front of the mercy seat on the ark, or else he will die, because I appear in the cloud above the mercy seat." So watch what happens here. Chapter 16, verse 15. There's these instructions for two goats that are supposed to be sacrificed for the sins of the people. Now, one is a sacrifice that's killed, and one is released into the wild. So watch this here. This is the coolest thing in the world, and I believe it even if no one else thinks so. So check this out. When the high priest slaughters the male goat for the people's sin offering and brings its blood inside the curtain, he will do the same with the blood as he did with the bull's blood. He's to sprinkle it against the mercy seat and in front of it. He will make atonement for the most holy place in this way for all their sins because of the Israelites' impurities and rebellious acts. He will do the same for the tent of meeting, that's the tabernacle, that remains among them, because it is surrounded by their impurities. No one may be in the tent of meeting from the time he enters to make atonement in the most holy place until he leaves after he has made atonement for himself, his household, and the whole assembly of Israel. Then he will go out to the altar that is before the Lord and make atonement for it. He is to take some of the bull's blood and some of the goat's blood and put it on the horns on all sides of the altar. And he is to sprinkle some of the blood on it with his finger 7 times to cleanse and set it apart from the Israelites' impurities. All right, you with me there? That's one goat. Look at your neighbor, say one goat. All right. Verse 20, when he has finished making atonement for the most holy place, the tent of meeting, and the altar, he is to present the live male goat. This is number 2. Aaron will lay both his hands, watch this, on the head of the live goat and confess over it all the Israelites' iniquities and rebellious acts, all their sins. He is to put them on the goat's head and send it away into the wilderness by the man appointed for the task. And the goat will carry all their iniquities into a desolate land, and the man will release it there. Okay, God is in the midst of a sinful people. The very holiness of God. The Son has descended in our midst. We're in trouble because God is so good. He's so glorious. The fire of his presence is among us, and we are full of sin. We are not worthy to go beyond the veil. We're not even worthy to have a tabernacle in our midst. He shouldn't be here. Or rather, he should be here, but I shouldn't. That like Adam and Eve, we were all exiled from Eden, driven out from the presence and life and glory of God. And it's not because of him. It's because of my choices and my sin. And so this two-part offering here, once a year on the Day of Atonement, these two animals, these two goats, one is sacrificed before the Lord. And Aaron would go in and he'd sprinkle the blood before the mercy seat. That you see God in his holiness, God in his mercy provides a sacrifice. That it should have been me. It should have been my life. And yet God, who is rich in mercy, provided a substitute. And this substitute is pure. It's a goat that's unblemished, no spots. And so you see what happens for wicked, sinful people is that they get access to the presence and glory of the Creator God. They get to be in covenant with Yahweh. They get to be his treasured possession, not because they were pure, but because an animal was clean in its place. I know some of you see where we're going. But before we get to Jesus, there's a second goat. And imagine the imagery here. Aaron, the high priest, lays his hands on the goat's head and he confesses all the sins of the people of Israel. That had to take more than one day. Just for my sins for the last year, we need a few weeks. He speaks the sin over it, and then he lays his hands on it. Impartation, passing it on to the goat. And this goat's not sacrificed because it's unclean. You can't offer something unclean to the Lord. And so it's taken out. The goat that carries the sin, it's taken out and driven out from the community and the presence of God. And here is what is so beautiful about the tabernacle and the Day of Atonement and the Sinai Covenant is that in Eden, when you and I, when we sinned, when we failed, when we didn't live up to the law of God, we were exiled. We were driven out from the community, driven out from the presence of God. But you see, Sinai is the gospel. Because Sinai in the tabernacle is a better Eden. Because what happens when we sin is that instead of me being driven out, my sin is being driven out on that second goat. And God finds a way to keep me in his presence by driving out my sin. And as that goat goes, my sin is carried along with it. And now you and I stand in the presence of God because of a substitute. And so, I know some of you, you see this. You see where this is going. Jesus of Nazareth. When he comes to make a new and better covenant than what was made at Mount Sinai. John 1:14 says this, the Word, who is Jesus, became flesh and dwelt among us. We observed his glory, the glory as the one and only Son from the Father, full of grace and truth. Listen, that word dwelt in the Greek is literally the word tabernacle. You can fact check me later. That in Jesus Christ, we saw the glory of God again. And it's not a building, it's not Solomon's temple, It's not Moses' tabernacle that they would set up in the wilderness. We have seen his glory. Where? In the Son of God. Because he tabernacled among us. And you see, in Jesus Christ, he is the bridge between heaven and earth. He is the place where the glory of God dwells. He is the place where sinners like you and me are made right with God. And so you see Jesus, he's like the temple. He's a temple on wheels. And everywhere he goes, sins are forgiven. And food comes out of nowhere. And water becomes wine. And storms are calmed. And demons are driven out. Why? Because Jesus is the glory of God in flesh. And he has tabernacled among us. Now watch what happens, Mark 15, 37 and 38. On the cross, Jesus let out a loud cry and breathed his last. Then the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. You see, this is why you need Leviticus. This is why you need those long chapters in the book of Exodus, man. It's like, what's happening? But you see, you won't understand who Jesus is without it. Because Mark gives you nothing. What curtain, Mark? The temple shower curtain? What are we talking about? What does it mean? What does Jesus dying have anything to do with I can't even talk. I'm so excited. What does it have to do with me? What does a curtain have to do with me? And I want to tell you today, you have a better access than even the high priest had. And you and I are much less holy. Why? Because a better sacrifice was made. Another substitute came. And it's not the blood of a goat, but the blood of the Son of God. And he took my sin the same way that Aaron would lay his hand on that goat and that goat would carry it away. Jesus carried my sins far away. And now I can go into the Holy of Holies, into the presence of God because of Jesus Christ on my behalf. That's who Jesus is. Don't you see? All the people of Israel got to watch one guy go into the tabernacle. One day a year. But you have 24/7 access to the glory of God. Live like it, church. Believe it, church. You have a better access because there's a better priest who made a better sacrifice with better blood, and it's his own. Let me read you a couple verses from Hebrews here, Hebrews 7. If you want to know how the New Testament relates to the Old, read the book of Hebrews. The whole thing, Jesus is better. Better sacrifice, better priest, better covenant. Watch this, Hebrews 7:23. Now many have become Levitical priests, since they are prevented by death from remaining in office. Always need a new priest. These priests be dying, and I got more sins. But because Jesus remains forever, he holds his priesthood permanently. Therefore, he is able to save completely those who come to God through him, since he always lives to intercede for them. Verse 26, for this is the kind of high priest we need. This is the kind of high priest Joey needs. Holy, innocent, undefiled, separated from sinners, and exalted above the heavens. I'll run through a wall right now. This is the high priest that Joey needs. You see, the problem with the other priests is that they were sinners too. And a goat ultimately could never take away my sins. And so every year, we're doing it again. Every year, new high priest, whoever it is this year, Aaron dies, his son's got to take over. He does it for a while. New sacrifices, more sins, lay hands on the goat again and again and again and again. But you see, this is why. This is why Christianity has no more sacrifices. Because there was one sacrifice that was good enough for you, for me, and for the whole world. And by his blood, he has washed the nations of the stain of sin. And this is what you got to know about the ascension. Yes, he died. Yes, he rose. But you see, when he ascended as the high priest, he went in to the presence of God. And I want to tell you today, maybe you heard that Jesus died for you. He died as you, that as he died, your old life died. And when he rose, you got a new life. But guess what? When he ascended in the presence of God, that ascension was your ascension and my ascension. And he brought us with him into the presence of God forever. So now I can come boldly before the throne of grace. That I, in the middle of the night, don't have to knock on the priest's door. I don't have to wait for that year of atonement, that day of atonement, one day down the road. I can right now, Sunday morning, come in to the presence of God. And what's that line that we sang in the first song? Faultless to stand before the throne. See, some of you, you don't yet believe the gospel. You believe it in your head, but you don't believe it here. And you know how you know? Because when you're doing really well, you come real confident before God. Oh, I'm doing really well. It's been a good week, Joey. But then when you sin, it's like, oh, I'm not worthy of the presence. And I want to tell you today, your best day and your worst day are irrelevant because there is a perfect blood and a perfect priest and a perfect sacrifice. And you come in to the presence of God with clean hands and a pure heart, not because of anything you have done, but because God has provided a substitute in your place. You have eternal access to the life of God, and your status is about that lamb. Listen, I didn't come into the room today and lift up my hands because I've done it all right. I come in this room and I clap and I dance and I shout and I sing because God has provided for a sinner like me access to his presence, access into the Holy of Holies, access into the glory of God. Final verse here, Hebrews 10, starting in verse 1. The law has only a shadow of the good things to come, and not the reality itself of those things. It can never perfect the worshipers by the same sacrifices they continually offer year after year. Otherwise, wouldn't they have stopped being offered, since the worshipers, purified once and for all, would no longer have any consciousness of sins? That's what we talked about, right? More sacrifices, because it's never enough. But look at verse 11. Every priest stands day after day, ministering and offering the same sacrifices time after time, which can never take away sins. Verse 12, but this man, but this Jesus, after offering one sacrifice for sins forever, sat down at the right hand of God. See, verse 11, the priests are standing. The priest stands, ministering again and again and again. But Jesus is a new priest, and he doesn't have to keep standing and keep offering and keep interceding. He can sit down at the right hand of God because his work is finished. And I want to tell you today, do not take for granted that access to the presence of God. I know today, you don't see me wearing the high priestly robes and the turban, thank God. You don't got to bring your goat and we'll sacrifice it and sprinkle blood. Like, man, thank God we don't have to do that. But if you're not careful, you will cheapen the level of access that is given to you by grace. And I want to tell you today, I know we're casual, electric guitar, drums. I'm wearing skinny jeans and boots, right? It's a great time. But the tension is, when the atmosphere is casual, do not let your heart become casual in the presence of God. Listen to me. Your living room can become the Holy of Holies when God shows up. Your car on the way to work can become the mercy seat where the glory of God begins to rest. and the wonder of it, the amazement of it, that like Adam and Eve, I should have been driven out from his presence, and I deserve it. I should have been like that goat, driven out carrying sins. And yet somehow, in the grace of God, I get to stay because someone else carried it in my place. What joy! What wonder! What a gospel this is! And I want to tell you today, in no uncertain terms, do not linger from a distance. Yeah, but Joey, you don't know what I've done. Well, Joey, it's just another Sunday. I guess I'll come to church. You are coming before the throne of God. You are entering in to the holy place. Because for whatever reason, God, in his mercy and grace, wants to make his home with you and me. He wants to make his home right here, in this room, in your house, in your marriage, in your family, in your neighborhood. And somehow, in the goodness of God, he drove away my sin without driving me away.